Hello and welcome to our Grace Break, Amazing Grace. I'm Judy.
I'm Rick. We're taking an amazing grace break.
We're here with your questions and just with some brief conversation just to encourage you in the middle of the day. So I have a question for you that comes up almost every time you preach or write about unconditional love, the unconditional love of God. And so this question often comes up, and I think it's a really good and important discussion. And it is, do you believe that we should continue in toxic relationships and just love them through it, or remove ourselves from these situations? And this person says, I try to keep my peace in my life, and it just seems like there's certain people who love to stir up the drama. We know those people. Mm-hmm. I avoid them and pray for them, but avoid the drama that steals my peace. Mm-hmm.
Well, most of us do avoid drama. I hope so. But the question comes up a lot because people are dealing with hard people, and there are abusive, mean people. So we never put the pressure on the person. There's no law that somebody has to do a certain way. We don't give love as something, as a command that you have to live out, because you can't.
Yeah.
None of us can. So we always direct it to knowing the love of God for you, and then the rest plays out. What I've seen in my life is that there were times earlier on when I had to do more protective measures to keep certain, what we would call toxic people, out of my life. But what you also find is that you can grow, that there is a growth in this love where we get bigger. So that's not a place we have to stay all the time. In fact, in one situation I was talking to the Lord about, and he told me something that has proven to be true over the years. He said, son, you're going to grow to where the things that other people do don't affect your soul negatively. Right. Now, I was in a situation of trying to protect myself from this
toxic
personality and toxic relationship. And I didn't like having to do that. I didn't like the feeling of it. But
especially
he said, son,
pastor,
right. He said, son, you're going to grow. And that has happened. I don't have that protective sense about me anymore, because what happens is you grow in the love of God, and you get big enough to where they really don't affect you, because you know who you are, and you know you're loved, and you're very secure, and you're very happy in that. So people will do their things like they're going to do. We live in a world like that, believe it or not. But you grow so big in the love of God to where the things that once were painful just don't hurt so much anymore, and you can be more giving and more blessing and more tolerant, for sure, of people, more understanding. As far as friendship, we pick the ones that are the most fun to be around. but as far as being hurt by people and feeling like we have to protect ourselves because what they're doing will crush us, destroy us, it poisons us, it hurts us emotionally, we do grow in this love of God. That's the good news. So we don't tell people you have to stay in a relationship where somebody's emotionally abusing you in order to fulfill the commandment to love.
Or that you're using that love to try and change the other person. That's not...
No, and so, a lot of times people just need to do what they have to do, for their emotional and mental well-being. But there's encouragement knowing that we can grow, that we grow out of that. God never condemns us. He didn't condemn me. He didn't say, son, what are you doing? Snap out of it. Just love that person.
Yeah.
He didn't do that. He just said, you're going to grow.
Yeah.
You're going to grow, and you're going to grow to the point where it won't hurt you anymore.
You said something that was really interesting to me the other day, is you said, aren't you glad that God didn't need to protect himself from me? Because in our unsaved states, we both had shook our fist at God, and we would never...
accuse God of things that he didn't do, had hateful feelings toward God. We felt he hated us, but he didn't have to protect himself. And so that's the nature that we're becoming aware of in that.
So it's more of a do what you need to do in the present moment, but also don't let yourself stay there.
Just understand that there's growth.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
you can grow to the point where you can go into situations, and we do have great friends. We also have hard friends.
Yeah. We
have
love a lot of
friends-
hard people
yeah,
in
a
this
lot of
world.
different kinds of people, but as we grow in God's love, we have more room,
Absolutely.
and thankfully, Jesus did as well. And this person had brought up about, she said, I never read about Jesus seeking out the people who intentionally brought trouble in his life, like the Pharisees. He called them whitewashed tombs, and he stood up to them. And when they came to harass him, he told them, you're of your father, the devil. And he was very offensive towards them, almost like he was trying to get them to leave. Now, I think this is a really good point in the sense that I think a lot of people think along these lines, and it sort of gives a justification for being hard on other people.
Yeah. When Jesus doing things like that, one thing, Jesus didn't have a need to protect himself. What he did was not a self-protection measure. He was telling these people the truth who had it all wrong, and he was trying to tell them how wrong they really were, that they were really barking up the wrong tree. In fact, he cried over them later on. He said, I wanted to gather you to myself. I tried gathering you to myself. You wouldn't have me.
Yeah.
And then, that's the thing about Jesus is Jesus didn't have the needy soul. He didn't have the need to protect himself. We see that in the way he lived and the way that he died.
I don't think he necessarily needed them to be around him. It wasn't like he was trying to say, "Oh, come harass me some more."
And they did seek him out. I mean, they did.
They did try to harass him.
But he was going. He'd go to the homes. He'd go to the home of Simon the Pharisee and have lunch and he knew they all were gathered around there, and they'd come around. They were all talking about him and stuff. It was hard to avoid them. Like it's hard to avoid imperfect people, drama people in this world.
It's true.
But the overall, I want to make 2 points in there. Overall, the good news is that we get bigger and better to where people just don't hurt us so much anymore. So that's the good news. Second point, do what you have to do, but to leave an abusive relationship doesn't mean that doesn't mean that you have to hate them now. You can love from long distance. That's the thing, is the love keeps you from being hurt and embittered and deformed by those things. So don't, especially physical. Nobody should ever get hit. Get out of that. get out. But it doesn't mean you have to be hating and embittered and deformed by it. You can still love or enjoy your relationship with God in a way that He can help you to love and to forgive.
Because don't you notice that sometimes when people are putting up boundaries to protect themselves, they themselves become smaller.
They get locked in.
And more bitter and more. They can. I'm not saying all do, but just there's a propensity as you're protecting yourself, you're not realizing that you're actually.
Yeah, well, an example that I had was, I remember my children when they were younger, they felt like a lot of times people may have abused us as we in the ministry. We were pastors, and so they felt like we took a lot of abuse sometimes. And they said, "Why would you trust anyone?" And I said, "We could fix ourselves. We could protect ourselves so nobody will hurt us again. We can just make it so that we don't get too close to people and we don't reveal too much to people, and we can be protective, and nobody will ever have that opportunity to betray us again. But we choose to live open."
Yeah.
We choose to live open. That way, we're not in fear, and we can still live big, and we can still embrace imperfect people. And will they hurt us again? Probably. But God's with us, so it'll be okay.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Well, thank you for the question. Thank you for kind of clarifying, because
I hope it did.
I feel like a lot of times people are like, well, what do you do with terrorists that comes into your home? Are you just going to love them? And we're like, that's really not what we're saying.
No, and there's not a rule about how to love. Love is something that God gives us, and you find out through the relationship how to deal with whatever situations.
So thank you for joining us today. Let us know if you have any additional questions or comments. Leave them below this video, and we'll respond to them as soon as we can.
We're glad you watched. Have a good day.